Hello, all morning. How are you?
How are you?
Doing well. Let me, do I sound okay? I'm going to check my audio.
Yeah, you sound good.
Really? That's good. I can't believe I sound good. I haven't even done my magic. There will be very, very little job growth organically because if you look at the business climate, if you are the CEO of a company, are you going to take risks right now? Are you going to be aggressive? Are you going to hire tons of people? Probably not. The people who work for you right now feel lucky to have a job. Google just put on a hiring freeze, and that's Google. So there's not going to be much organic job growth. If we're fortunate, we will get back 50 to 60% of the jobs that have been lost. And the job growth that will exist has to come from the government. It has to be a federal initiative where we start to try and resuscitate employment by any means possible. So this would mean investing hundreds of billions of dollars, even trillions in an infrastructure program to rebuild the country. It would mean helping states and cities hire contact tracers to figure out what the real numbers are for the COVID-19 spread in our people. It means investing in a mental health initiative, investing in education, pretty much invest in anything that's going to employ a significant number of people because the devastation in the job market is here to stay.
On the campaign trail, you also talked a lot about automation and AI. Do you still foresee that as a potential area for job creation?
We're experiencing 10 years worth of change in 10 weeks, where companies that were on the fence about investing in AI and robots and software have doubled down on those investments because if you have fewer people, it's a plus. And again, looking at your own experience, if you get your Domino's pizza in a self-driving car, now you're actually going to like it more. It's a value add. Instead of being like, oh, this is creepy, you'll be like, oh, good. I'd rather that than like some freaking person came and like handled my pizza and gave it to me. Or you're going to need 5 or 10 more logistics experts and engineers, but you're going to get rid of like a much larger number of clerical workers, delivery people, drivers, and on and on.
On the campaign trail, you also talked a lot about fixing income inequality. Do you think this pandemic will widen those disparities, or do you think there's any hope that on the flip side it could give workers more bargaining power and to ask for things like a minimum wage, a higher minimum wage?
The trends are unfortunately set against workers for quite a while, and it's one reason why I'm so passionate about a unified government response. And when I talked to Joe about this, like he seemed to see it the same way. We cannot rely upon market forces to address this crisis because the market forces, unfortunately, aren't going to be heading in the right direction. The cost of doing business is going to go up in many, many spaces. 30% of small businesses are going to be gone for good, which is going to be transformative for our neighborhoods, our communities, in really disastrous ways. As you can tell, like I'm fairly negative about like the future because we're seeing unprecedented levels of dislocation in the labor market. And I've run companies. Like I know how this stuff works, where you wait until really bad times to make unpleasant decisions. But then when it's a bad time, then you start examining everything you've like imagined about how you can do more with less. Income inequality is going to get much, much worse as a result of this crisis. We've taken a winner-take-all economy and just ramped it up to 11 or 12. And the only way we're going to address rampant income inequality is by simply putting money into people's hands. So these are the things that we're going to have to do if we're serious about trying to keep income inequality from skyrocketing to dystopian levels.
Should there be a conversation about CEO pay, executive pay, and the enormous disparity between what CEOs are paid and the average worker?
Companies are not going to themselves rein in CEO pay. So if you wanted to do so, you would have to do something legislatively. To me, like I'm more concerned about the people at the bottom than the people at the top. You know, it's like if the average worker is doing well or the average American is doing well, then the fact that there are massive disparities, I think, is like less problematic for people.
Do you think that now that we're talking so much more about paid sick leave and paid leave for caretakers and things like that, that will or that it should at least become part of the national conversation in a more permanent way?
If you have 40 million unemployed, then having an employment-based health insurance system seems completely insane. I'm advocating for big changes in the workforce that I think would help, like a 4-day work week, which would create jobs at the margins, would improve our mental health, would be stimulative of the economy in some ways. And studies have shown that we'd be just as productive. I think that those are the kinds of opportunities that this pandemic might generate. You can tell I'm deeply, it's beyond distressed. I'm like heartbroken by what's happening to families around the country right now. If you saw the level of misery and despair and deprivation out there, you know, it's going to change us forever and not in good ways.
As Congress debates what to do next after the CARES Act, I mean, these boosted benefits aren't going to last forever. What do you think should be a priority for the next package whenever it comes?
Maybe 10% of the relief money has gone directly to people. The vast majority of it has gone to big companies. We should be reversing that ratio. We need to just put money into people's hands. One of the worst things we've done is we've tied so many of these benefits to unemployment. And so people are angry right now. It's like, oh, you're getting paid more to not work than to work. Instead of tying it to unemployment, we should just give people the money. And then if they work, they get to keep that too, so that their interests are aligned with getting back into the workforce as quickly as possible.
Back to sort of the focus on the future of work, we've talked about a shift towards telework and an increase in automation. Do you think there's other trends emerging right now that will permanently alter the labor market?
So there are going to be a handful of winners from that, like some of the tech companies that enable this sort of work. But it's going to be much, much harder for people with lower skill levels. And these things are essentially permanent.
Do you think Americans have enough of the skills for the jobs that you're talking about? Or will we need to be recruiting people from overseas?
The concern should be that there are going to be millions of Americans who do not have the skills to compete in a market where being physically next to someone is negative value. And so that's really the major concern. We have to try and create those opportunities in any way we can. So that's where we're heading. We're heading towards the disintegration of millions of households around the country. And that is going to happen unless our government acts very, very quickly and dramatically.
What do you think the government could do? Is it a question of retraining programs or promoting technical colleges? What do you think some of the solutions might be that could happen at a policy level?
So the first step is cash relief, which will also generate jobs where they live because they'll spend the money locally. And then the next step is trying to reconstitute a set of opportunities that would make sense. The retraining thing is essentially a myth. So saying that we're going to somehow retrain tens of millions of displaced high school graduates is essentially bullshit. And anytime we talk about that, we are doing our people a disservice and we're wasting time.
Creating jobs sounds almost like a new deal for the 21st century or something along those lines. Is that what you're envisioning?
Yeah, we need a new deal for the 21st century. There needs to be a sustained $1 trillion investment in trying to bring us back from this crisis. The only silver lining is that we may be able to accelerate meaningful solutions as well as having some of these problems accelerate. So I believe our country is ready to embrace universal basic income, universal health care, different treatment of people independent of whether they have what's considered like a 9-to-5 full-time job. Those are the things that I'm excited about. And one poll I saw said that 80% of Americans favor emergency cash relief for people during this time. So we're essentially unanimous about things that we should be doing. And I'm optimistic that we still can get that passed in Congress sooner rather than later.